Picture this. It's the early morning hours of September 27, 1942, and you're standing on the deck of a ship right in the middle of the vast, isolated South Atlantic.
Oh, man. That is a terrifying place to be in 1942.
Right, it really is. The air is thick with this heavy mist. Visibility is just terrible, maybe, I don't know, 1 nautical mile. And you're aboard the SS Stephen Hopkins.
Which is an American cargo ship, yeah.
Exactly. And let me tell you, this ship is not glamorous. She is a makeshift, slow, unpolished freighter, and she's currently just crawling through the water at less than 8 knots.
It's just such a tense environment to put yourself in because, like I said, in 1942, the oceans were an absolute battleground.
Yeah.
Out there in the South Atlantic, you were thousands of miles from any escort ships or, protective convoys. You're sailing completely independently, basically totally exposed.
Totally exposed and barely making headway. So the mist finally begins to lift around 8:00 a.m. Visibility stretches out to maybe 2 miles, and that's when the captain sees it.
Oh, here we go.
2 strange ships just sitting completely motionless in the water ahead of you.
And this is key to an experienced mariner. That is an immediate, terrifying anomaly. Ships in the middle of the ocean during wartime simply do not park.
No, they don't. And today, we are going to explore exactly what happened next. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We have this fascinating historical text on the 1942 Battle of the Atlantic, and our mission for today is to explore a largely forgotten but honestly completely epic naval clash.
It really is epic.
It perfectly illustrates 2 drastically, almost comically different approaches to wartime survival. On one side, you have bespoke, high-tech, elaborate deception, and on the other side, brute force, unglamorous mass production.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is the Stephen Hopkins about to sail into?
Well, to understand the sheer danger lurking in that mist, we actually have to take a step back. We need to look at a German naval strategy known as Guerre de Course.
Guerre de Course, which translates to what? Commerce raiding? Exactly, commerce raiding. And this isn't a new concept, right? If you go back to the 15th through the 18th centuries, merchant vessels routinely carried large caliber guns for self-defense.
Right, because of pirates and privateers.
Yeah, and in times of war, governments would literally issue letters of marque, which essentially gave privateers the legal right to go out and hunt down enemy merchant ships.
It's basically state-sponsored piracy, right? Where that line between a civilian cargo ship and an actual warship was completely blurred.
Exactly. But the Industrial Revolution kind of severed that connection. By the 19th century, technology forced warships and merchant ships to diverge.
Because warships needed heavy armor.
Right. Heavy metal armor, massive engines for speed, all of which eats up cargo space. Whereas merchant ships, they needed cheap operating costs and maximum cargo capacity. So by 1914, merchant ships were largely unarmed. The established rule was that only national warships carried weapons.
But Germany found a loophole. Because, their surface navy was historically a lot smaller than Britain's Royal Navy. They couldn't just build a matching fleet of battleships.
What's fascinating here is how necessity drives extreme innovation. The advent of the submarine in World War I changed the rules of engagement. But, early submarines were small, they had short ranges, and they carried very few torpedoes.
Right.
And Germany wanted to strike British and French shipping all over the globe to cut off the supply lines that kept their empires functioning. So, in August 1915, a German naval lieutenant proposed a radically different kind of cruiser, a completely disguised warship.
Oh, this is the fruit boat, right?
Yes. The Pungo.
Right, which used to carry bananas from Cameroon to Germany.
Yeah, but they did a lot more than just take it. They weaponized it from the inside out. They secretly packed it with 4 15-centimeter guns, torpedo tubes, and 500 mines.
Wow.
And they completely hid all this weaponry behind false bulkheads. They commissioned it as the Mu, and it went out and sank 40 merchant ships.
40! That's insane.
The Allies had absolutely no idea what was hitting them because the ship just looked like a harmless neutral freighter. It was a massive success, and it became the prototype for everything that followed.
So this whole wolf in sheep's clothing concept was super effective in World War I. But fast forward 25 years to World War II, and the German Navy didn't just replicate it, did they?
No, not at all.
They scaled it up into this massive industrial art form.
Yeah.
So let's look at the monster waiting for the Stephen Hopkins in that mist. The KMS Steer. Because looking at the specs from our sources, This thing is just an engineering marvel.
The Steer is the ultimate evolution of this commerce raiding concept. It actually began its life as a regular civilian freighter called the Cairo, built back in 1936 to run routes to the Eastern Mediterranean.
Okay.
But the German Navy, the Kriegsmarine, requisitioned it and completely transformed it. It displaced 11,000 tons.
That is massive.
To put that in perspective, that is the size of a modern guided missile cruiser. But
That is terrifying.
and inside this perfectly ordinary-looking civilian freighter, they installed a massive arsenal. 6 15-centimeter guns, anti-aircraft autocannons, underwater torpedo tubes, and this is incredible, 2 Arado float planes hidden away.
Hold on, wait. Salt water and delicate aircraft engines are a terrible mix. Not to mention, a cargo ship doesn't have a runway. How does a converted freighter practically launch and recover an airplane in the middle of the ocean without anyone noticing?
It requires some extreme mechanical ingenuity. The Germans heavily modified the internal holds of the ship to store these seaplanes safely away from the corrosive salt spray.
Okay.
When they needed to scout over the horizon to find targets, they would use these heavy internal cranes to hoist the plane up, swing it out over the side of the ship, and gently lower it into the ocean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the pilot would take off right from the water, do his reconnaissance, land back near the ship, and the crane would hoist the plane back inside before any other ship could spot them.
It's basically a heavily armed aircraft carrier folding itself up into a standard shipping container. But what's wildest to me is the act of deception.
Oh, the disguises?
Yeah, our sources mention they carried materials to literally build temporary dummy funnels just to change their silhouette. They had all this paint to constantly change their hull colors in the middle of the ocean. They would fly flags of neutral nations or even allied nations right up until the very last second.
And the tactical advantage there is paramount. By the time an Allied merchant ship realized the vessel approaching them wasn't a friendly freighter, the Steer had already dropped its false bulkheads, raised its guns, and aimed at point-blank range.
I do have to ask about the logic of this, though. Like, why go through all this trouble?
What do you mean?
Well, I think of these ships like the ultimate maritime catfish, right? Like a modern Trojan horse, an armored tank disguised as an Amazon delivery van. But the engineering to make guns collapse into the deck, the logistics of painting a ship at sea, why invest so many resources into elaborate disguises instead of just building traditional warships?
Well, what's fascinating here is the tactical logic behind it. It all comes down to a concept called asymmetrical warfare and return on investment.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure. If Germany builds a massive traditional battleship, like the Bismarck, the British Royal Navy knows exactly what it is, and they will send an entire armada to hunt it down and sink it.
Right, it is a huge target.
Exactly. But a disguised surface raider blends in perfectly with the thousands of commercial ships crossing the oceans every day. Once a ship like the Steer was out at sea, just the rumor of its existence forced the Allies to tie down dozens of heavy cruisers to scour the oceans looking for it.
So for the cost of retrofitting one civilian freighter, Germany distracts, 20 Allied warships? Ships that could have been used in European waters or to support amphibious landings?
Yes, exactly. The disruption to the global supply chain is immense. It is a brilliant, bespoke, highly lethal strategy.
Okay, so that is the hyper-engineered, deceptive predator waiting in the mist. Now let's look at the prey, the American strategy. Because if the German strategy was high-tech deception, the U.S. strategy was, it was the exact opposite.
It was pragmatic, brute force simplicity.
Yeah. Let's talk about the United States Merchant Marine in the late 1930s. The sources point out that going into World War II, the U.S. fleet was aging badly.
Very badly.
Most of their ships were over 20 years old. They were just holdovers from a massive shipbuilding boom during World War I. So in 1936, the government passes the Merchant Marine Act and creates the U.S. Maritime Commission to build 500 modern cargo ships.
And initially, the commission designed some truly fantastic vessels, the C1, C2, and C3 standard designs for dry cargo, and the T-Series for tankers.
These are the good ones.
Oh, yeah. The C2s and C3s were fast, capable of making 16 to 19 knots, which meant they could actually outrun a submerged U-boat. They were fuel efficient. They even had modern crew quarters with air conditioning and hot and cold running water.
Wow, fancy. But then Pearl Harbor happens.
Right.
And the U.S. is suddenly thrust into a global, multi-ocean war. Those 500 ships, nowhere near enough. They need thousands of ships, and they need them yesterday to supply Britain and Russia. And they hit a massive industrial bottleneck.
A critical one. Those beautiful, fast C-class ships relied on high-speed steam turbines for propulsion. And steam turbines are incredibly complex to build.
Because of the precision required.
Exactly. They require exceptionally tight manufacturing tolerances, specialized metal alloys, and highly skilled labor.
And it's not just the turbines themselves, is it? It's the mechanism connecting the engine to the propeller.
Yes, that is the real choke point, the reduction gears. See, a steam turbine spins at thousands of revolutions per minute, but a ship's propeller is massive. It needs to spin much slower, maybe around 100 revolutions per minute, to actually grip the water.
Right, otherwise it just spins out.
Exactly. So to bridge that gap, you need reduction gears. And machining these gears requires absolute microscopic precision out of hardened steel. Otherwise, the enormous torque will just tear the metal apart.
And I'm guessing we couldn't just spin up factories to make those overnight.
Not at all. Building the massive specialized factories just to manufacture those reduction gears would take years. The U.S. simply didn't have the time or the industrial capacity to put turbines and reduction gears in thousands of new ships.
It's kind of like a tech company today realizing they can't get the advanced microchips for their new flagship smartphone because of a supply chain crash. And instead of stopping production, they intentionally release a version of the phone using clunky 10-year-old microchips just to make sure they have a product on the shelves.
That's a great analogy.
So the U.S. Maritime Commission had to pivot, and their solution becomes the legendary Liberty ship.
And their pivot was drastic. I mean, they completely abandoned those sleek, modern C-class designs for the emergency fleet.
What absolutely blows my mind about the Liberty ship is the design they chose. They borrowed this unglamorous British design, the Ocean-class freighter. And that design was based on the Sunderland Tramp, which is a ship class dating back to 1879. And to solve the engine bottleneck, they used vertical triple expansion steam engines, VTEs, instead of turbines.
Right, because VTE engines are essentially giant pistons powered by steam. They run at much lower speeds, which means they can be connected directly to the propeller shaft.
So no highly machined reduction gears required at all.
None.
Okay, I have to pause here. Wait, so to win a global mechanized war against high-tech U-boats and bespoke radar-equipped surface raiders, we essentially went backward to 19th century technology. We were fighting the most advanced war machine on Earth with an engine design from 1879.
I know it sounds crazy, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is an absolute masterstroke of logistical genius. You have to remember the wartime context here.
Okay.
Perfecting an engine design doesn't matter one bit if you don't have a hull to put it in. The U.S. Maritime Commission realized that the older VTE engines could be mass-produced quickly by locomotive companies, refrigerator manufacturers, and machine shops, places that didn't have the specialized capability to build high-tech turbines.
So it's entirely about lowering the barrier to entry for manufacturing.
By simplifying the design and accepting a retrograde engine, they turned shipbuilding from a bespoke craft into an assembly line. Furthermore, instead of riveting the steel hull plates together, which requires highly skilled teams of riveters, they welded them.
Oh, and welding is much faster to teach.
Exactly. Welding could be taught to a massive, newly recruited workforce relatively quickly. Entirely new shipyards sprang up, like the Permanente Metals Corporation in Richmond, California, where the Stephen Hopkins was actually constructed.
But there was a massive trade-off for this mass production, right?
Yeah.
Speed.
A severe vulnerability, yeah. Because they used the older VTE engines, the Liberty ships had a sluggish top speed of just 11.5 knots.
That is so slow.
Compared to the 15 to 19 knots of the earlier designs, or the 14-plus knots of the German raiders, the Liberty ship was a sitting duck. It couldn't outrun a submarine, and it certainly couldn't outrun a surface raider.
Which brings us right back to that misty morning in the South Atlantic, September 27, 1942. The collision of these two diametrically opposed philosophies. You have the bespoke German Predator, the KMS Steer lurking in the water, and you have the mass-produced American makeshift, the SS Stephen Hopkins, slowly making its way toward them.
Let's set the stage for the Stephen Hopkins. It's actually on its first voyage. It had dropped cargo across the Pacific, stopped in Cape Town, South Africa, and is now steaming toward Brazil to join a convoy home.
So it's basically empty.
Right, it's sailing in ballast, meaning its cargo holds are empty. Because it's light, it's riding extremely high in the water.
And riding high creates a major mechanical problem. Because the hull is lifted so far out of the ocean, the top of the ship's massive bronze propeller is actually breaching the surface of the water as it spins.
And a propeller needs to bite into dense, solid water to generate thrust. When it breaches the surface, it aerates the water, causing cavitation and a massive loss of efficiency. So the Stephen Hopkins isn't even making its sluggish top speed of 11.5 knots. It is struggling to make 8 knots.
It is practically crawling. Now, commanding the Stephen Hopkins is Captain Paul Buck. And he is no rookie. He has 23 years of experience at sea. He looks through the lifting mist, and he sees these 2 motionless ships.
Yeah.
To an untrained eye, they just look like ordinary merchant freighters taking a break. But Captain Buck knows the grim realities of the ocean in wartime.
He absolutely does. Legitimate merchant vessels do not just linger in the middle of the ocean. You are either moving toward a destination or you have suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure.
There's no in-between.
Finding 2 ships sitting together perfectly peacefully indicates a rendezvous. In 1942, in the middle of the South Atlantic, the only ships conducting secret rendezvous far from any port were Axis vessels transferring supplies or prisoners.
So Captain Buck instantly realizes he has stumbled into a nightmare. One of those ships is almost certainly a German auxiliary cruiser, and sure enough, the steer sees them. The German raider runs up a flag signal that translates to, "Stop at once."
The camouflages drop.
Exactly. The false deck houses collapse, the heavy metal shutters open, and the ship suddenly bristles with heavy artillery.
It's a terrifying moment of realization. Captain Buck is facing an impossible choice. He is in a slow, lumbering cargo ship. He cannot outrun them. The Liberty ship simply doesn't have the speed.
No.
His options are to surrender his ship and his crew to the enemy or fight.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Captain Buck, facing a massive ship armed with 6 15-centimeter guns and torpedoes, decides to fight. It's like a civilian with a rusty slingshot turning around to fight a heavily armed SWAT team and actually taking them down. He orders the United States ensign to be run up the mast, and he turns his sluggish ship away from the enemy.
Turning the ship is a crucial tactical maneuver. By presenting the stern to the enemy, he offers a much smaller profile to the German gunners, making the Stephen Hopkins a harder target to hit from a distance.
It also allows him to bring his own weapon to bear. Because the Stephen Hopkins isn't entirely defenseless, is it? They have a single 20-year-old 4-inch gun mounted on the stern, manned by a Navy armed guard crew.
It is a stunning mismatch on paper. A single vintage 4-inch gun against an entire concealed battery of state-of-the-art German naval artillery equipped with advanced rangefinders.
It's less like a traditional naval battle and more like 2 guys trapped in a phone booth with knives. Because the Hopkins couldn't run, the engagement happens at almost point-blank range.
Right.
And when you are that close, the steer's advanced targeting systems and superior range don't matter as much. It just comes down to who can swing faster and hit harder. Captain Buck and his crew decide that if they are going down, they are going to make the Predator bleed. They open fire.
What follows is a brutal, chaotic brawl. The steer unleashes its massive arsenal. The Stephen Hopkins is immediately outmatched, taking devastating damage to its superstructure, its engine room, and its radio room.
But the crew of the Stephen Hopkins keeps manually loading and firing that single 4-inch gun. I want to explain exactly how a single 4-inch gun guts a massive 11,000-ton Predator, because it comes down to the fundamental design of the German Raider.
Remember, the steer is a converted civilian freighter. It doesn't have the thick, heavy armor belt of a purpose-built military battleship.
Yeah.
Its hull is relatively thin steel.
So when the American gunners aim for the steer's vulnerable spots, their 4-inch shells easily punch right through the hull. They score direct hits on the steer's engine cooling system, completely disabling its propulsion.
Wow.
They jam the Raider's rudder, and crucially, they spark raging fires near the torpedo tubes and the massive internal ammunition magazine. The American cargo ship is ultimately lost, battered into a burning wreck and sinking into the South Atlantic. But the fires they ignite on the German Raider burn out of control.
The irony is just profound. The damage to the steer is so severe, so catastrophic, and the fire is creeping so close to the explosives that the German crew cannot save their own ship.
They couldn't put it out.
No. This bespoke, highly engineered, incredibly expensive commerce raider, designed to roam the oceans for a year and sink dozens of Allied vessels, is completely gutted by a mass-produced 19th century tech freighter on its very first voyage. The Germans are forced to scuttle the steer to intentionally sink their own burning ship right there in the ocean. The Stephen Hopkins achieved mutual destruction.
It is an incredible story of defiance. A slow, unglamorous Liberty ship taking down a top-tier Predator by fighting dirty at point-blank range. So, what does this all mean? Why does a naval battle from 1942 matter to you listening today?
It's a great question.
We live in a world that is completely obsessed with the latest tech. We want perfect optimization, the sleekest designs, the most advanced algorithms. We are constantly chasing the steer model of doing things over-engineered, bespoke perfection.
But the Battle of the Atlantic, and specifically the creation of the Liberty ship, proves that perfection is often the enemy of the good. The U.S. didn't win the logistics war by building the perfect, fastest ship. They won by building a makeshift. They intentionally went backward to move forward. They accepted a slow speed and a clunky 1879 engine design because it allowed them to utilize factories that couldn't build advanced turbines. They were pushing out thousands of ships faster than the enemy could sink them.
Raw, unglamorous pragmatism, standing toe-to-toe with over-engineered perfection. And winning.
This raises an important question for all of us about how we view problem solving.
Yeah.
True resilience often looks messy. It looks improvised. The Stephen Hopkins wasn't designed to be a warship, and Captain Buck wasn't commanding a modern cruiser.
He used what he had.
Right. A slow hull and a single old gun. And he applied it with maximum courage and tactical smarts. It's the systems that can scale, that can take a punch and keep functioning even if they aren't pretty, that ultimately endure.
Making do with the tools you have. We've spent this whole time praising the ruggedness of analog 19th century tech, saving the day in a global crisis. It makes you wonder, as our modern world becomes completely dependent on fragile, highly complex AI, just-in-time logistics, and digital supply chains, do we even have a makeshift fallback anymore?
That's a scary thought.
If the digital mist rolls in tomorrow and our complex systems fail, do we have an 1879 steam engine equivalent to keep the world running? It's something to think about the next time you find yourself facing a threat, and your unglamorous solution is exactly what you need to survive.